Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We are calling the meeting of tonight's Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board to order at 5:36. It's February 13th, and we'll start with roll call. I will be chairing the meeting and serving as secretary tonight, so I will call the roll. Chair Delaney is not here. Marianne Pintar, present. Bonnie Kank, she is not here. Dr. Brown. Andrew Hayes. Nadia Keen Ayub. Present. Ariana Federico Mondragon. Here. Tim Ware.
Here.
Magic. G.I. Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. We will now move into public comment. Mr. Parker, do we have members of the public wishing to speak?
We do. We have several members of the public wishing to speak. We'll start with the folks who are here. David Settles.
Hey, hello. I think I've been up here a few times, but I just, once again, I'll just briefly go over. I'm the brother of Matthew Settles. My brother died in the George Bailey jail in August of 2022. He was the 18th person that year. And I'm here just to remember him and to bring up his case. My brother, just to quickly go over, I know I've said this a number of times, my brother was in the county mental hospital. He had been in and out doing well. He was, when he was pulled out and transferred to the downtown jail and was not put back in the psych unit. He had been in there, and after getting removed from the county hospital, he went to the general population, was assaulted within days. That was the last contact we had when he was pulled out of the county hospital. We despite my mom trying to reach him, we did not know he was transferred to George Bailey, and he, died in solitary confinement after having been assaulted a couple times, alone. So, my brother had schizophrenia. He had been treated for it for 20 years, after graduating from college. So, I'm just here to, we're just looking for transparency and improvement in the way he was treated. There was the fact that we couldn't reach him, the fact that he got no help in the jail when he obviously had this condition. So I just, thank you. I just want to keep the awareness of my brother, and thank you for the work you're doing. I think improving the treatment of the mentally ill, as well as many other cases. But for my brother, it was mentally ill, improvements there, and the transparency. We are still looking. We have zero information what happened to him. The entire 2 months he was back in the jail, which is just wrong. So thank you for all you do, and that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Settles.
Next, we will go to Yusef Miller.
Good evening, CLERB. My name is Yusef Miller with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition Saving Lives in Custody campaign. And here we are once again, and we want to uplift the names of the family members who have lost loved ones in custody. There are a lot of problems within custody deaths in San Diego County. And right now, we're again at a high rate of in custody death. The last I checked, San Diego had 3 in custody deaths. LA has 3 in custody deaths. LA is 3 times the size of San Diego. So either we should have only 1 death, we should have 0. But though we have 1 death, we are outpaced and at the same number as the county that is 3 times our size. This is terrible, terrible news, and a terrible track record to start off the year. We're only in February and we're already at a high rate. The families have suffered from, as you've heard from the family of Matthew Settles, from misclassification. People who go into jail who have mental health issues, and those mental health issues are are managed by people in the jails, which is not where it should be. That is the largest mental health facility in the county is our jails. And they are not doing a bang up job. As you can see, we are losing loved ones. Many people that are on the Saving Lives in Custody campaign have lost loved ones from mental health, poor treatment and poor management of mental health. Not to mention, we have a high rate of overdose in the jails. People say, of course, we've heard that the inmates are bringing these drugs into jails. And we believe that all people should be scanned, deputies and staff, anyone entering. And not only that, may I add that there are many routes for a deputy and staff, especially deputies, to enter these jails. There is only one. Let's say, for example, Men's Central Jail, you can go through the Sally Port if you're a deputy without going through the front desk, without getting scanned or anything. Who knows what's in that bag at the Sally Port as these deputies are going in? I don't know. We don't know. Is it Subway or is it something else? These people are overdosing. And lastly, as my time is running out, we have not seen an updated report on the Sheriff's Department's website on the overdoses that are going on in jail. We have to monitor those things to see if we're making any improvements or not. It's not enough to have Narcan available. What we need to stop is the influx of drugs into our systems that the family members do not supposed to have access to. This is the issue that is the Sheriff's Department's fault, that they have access in a secure facility to these drugs to overdose in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Deanna Cerna. Okay, we will come back. Should I stay with the Cerna family? Okay. Thank you, Plum.
Thank you, board members, for letting me speak tonight. My name is Paloma Cerna, Elisa Cerna's mother, and I am part of the Saving Lives campaign. I want to know, when is Kelly Martinez going to come and attend one of these meetings? Why is she still avoiding these meetings, avoiding the community? The community has a lot of questions to ask her. We need to continue to ask Kelly Martinez to scan all persons entering jail facilities, despite the sheriffs are scanning inmates using special equipment for drugs detections on inmates' mail, using canines as on inmates' locations. But she refused to scan her employees. Not only does the sheriff department need to make sure that proper safety checks are being done on time, but to make sure that there are signs of life in each cell. In Elisa Cerna's case, Corporal Tony Hall Bennett walked past Elisa's cell 5 to 6 times as Elisa lay dead on the cell floor for an hour, and Hall Bennett never checked for proof of life, as video evidence was shown during the criminal trial. There is a systemic failure. We need transparency now, not tomorrow, but now. The CLERB has 35 death cases with 21 pending since the sheriff department withholds all reports and evidence. We need to eliminate the statute of limitation on all deaths. When families file a wrongful death claim on the sheriff department, they withhold the names of deputies, medical staff, and evidence like videos, audio interviews, CLERB reports, and internal affairs, making it harder for families to litigate with the sheriff department and harder for the DA to charge deputies and medical staff criminally. Oscar Leal death was classified as a homicide. I would like to know, who was charged for his death? We are still waiting for information answered on the deaths of Kevin Mills, Matthew Settles, Patricia Adamson. These loved ones will never be forgotten. CLERB needs to continue to fight to have jurisdiction over the medical staff who is employed by the San Diego Sheriff Department. The medical employees of the San Diego Sheriff are as much as accountable for the death of our loved ones. The medical staff have a duty to their patient, not inmates, patient, our loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Joel Cernan.
I would like, sorry, I would like to start by saying, thank you for everyone taking their time out their days to be here. I would like to say not too many words, but just a couple. Where's accountability and integrity within each person who walks through these doors? How can we say we're a great nation, a great country, when we still can't police our own people to do their jobs? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Grace June.
Hello, good evening, members of CLERB. My name is Grace Jun. I have the great honor and privilege of representing a number of civil rights litigants, including the family of Elisa Serna. I know that this board is familiar with the details of Ms. Serna's death. Elisa died of alcohol withdrawal, alcohol and benzodiazepine withdrawal that had been identified at intake. She suffered for 5 days terribly before she died. It's a tragic case, as the board is well aware, but I wanted to talk about something else. Alcohol withdrawal is actually one of the leading causes of death in jails. There is a very high rate of mortality related to alcohol withdrawal, very treatable as well and very preventable. And I want to direct CLERB's attention to a case involving Bruce Stuckey. The CLERB case number was 17-038. Mr. Stuckey died in 2017 of, guess what? Complications from alcohol withdrawal. CLERB had identified the fact that he had never received treatment for alcohol withdrawal. What CLERB did, according to its own published report, is it then referred the case back to the sheriff's department and said, hey, take a look at this. It looks like your alcohol withdrawal protocol was never initiated for this man who you identified as suffering from alcohol withdrawal. Guess what? 2 years later, November 2019, that's exactly what happened to Elisa Serna. That's how Elisa died. And so in 2017, when CLERB notified the sheriff's department, what happened? Did the sheriff's department ever look into it? Did they ever respond? Did they ever review the alcohol withdrawal protocols? I urge CLERB to take the initiative to go back and follow up with the sheriff's department whenever it issues recommendations. There is a systemic problem at the sheriff's department, as Ms. Serna alluded to. During the closing arguments in the criminal trial of the nurse and the doctor who killed Elisa Serna, the DA said, there are no heroes in this story. Nobody came to save Elisa Serna's life. And so what I am asking this board to do is for all the deaths that happened before Elisa, for all the deaths that happened after Elisa, if there is a recommendation that this board makes to the sheriff's department, please follow up. Please see what has been done, what steps have been taken, because that type of action and intervention can actually prevent inmate deaths. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And if I may, in reference to that public comment, I'm very familiar with Mr. Stuckey's death as I was the investigator for that. I do remember writing a letter to the sheriff's department, and off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly what the response was. I do know that they responded to the letter of concern that we drafted about those instances or the issues you just brought up. What I can do is if you get me a phone number or an email address, I can go back to the response that was given at minimum and make sure that you have that as we move forward. Okay, all right, thank you. And next we will go to Sabrina Shuck.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for being here and listening, being here for all these families. We just came down from Orange County today, so I wrote some things down so that I could share them with you guys tonight. So forgive me if I'm reading. First, I want to thank you and all the work that you guys have dedicated yourself to. I think it's commendable. And I've said earlier also, while I'm viscerally sickened by the findings, it's simultaneously very validating for strangers who don't know our family, who don't know Hayden, didn't know Hayden, but that you wrote down our worst nightmares in black and white to be shared with the public. As painful as it is, without this public information, we can't hold as a society, we can't even begin to have the difficult conversation about the stigma and the culpability for the tragic end that Hayden met, and that so many more individuals in our community have faced. When I walked in on you talking, I thought you might be talking about Hayden. It's sickening how common this story is. It's very shocking for me that I trusted my son in custody. And I thought he was in the safest place. And though he died in custody nearly 2 years ago, unfortunately, I don't think this conversation has really even begun. And for us, it's just beginning. Ultimately, it's a conversation about mental illness and how our institutions too often categorically discard and vilify the most fragile and the most vulnerable. I spent my entire research career in healthcare and education. These perspectives are not new. These are not new, as you just heard. We've known that people die of withdrawal in jails at astronomical rates. And while I have an intellectual understanding for how we can lose compassion for individuals in the face of daily exposure, the utter and blatant disregard for a clearly sick and dying human being is just incomprehensible to me. And then withholding his autopsy from us for over 11 months and any related information, no drug screen, no findings at the day he was taken into custody, withholding the information that was written in the findings here.
Ms. Shuck, I absolutely hate to do this to you, but
This
your
is-
3 minutes is up.
A grave systematic wrong.
We have another 3 minutes. You have another 3 minutes.
These actions single a grave systematic wrong that goes beyond the wrong of losing our son. That's all.
Thank you. We had a request to speak from Paige Shuck. Is that still? No? No? Okay.
I don't have anything written and I actually wasn't going to speak, but I just want to take all of my time to just be quiet and think about these people that are dying horrible deaths. That's happening at just such an unprecedented rate. And it's like, it's 2024. Why are people dying in jail? We're a developed country. We're supposed to be the best. And yet brothers and sisters and sons and daughters and human beings are being left in cells by themselves, given not even given no decency, given no respect. And so I just want to stand here for the rest of this time and just think about that, please. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Shuck. Next, we'll go to Marcus Barassa.
Thank you, Mr. Parker and members of the board. It struck me in those few minutes of silence how incomprehensible it is that people trapped in cells went without care for 5 days and for 6 days, and how many minutes of suffering that was for them. I am an attorney at Mackenzie Scott, the firm that represents the Shuck family and many others who this body is investigated and is investigating. I want to just send my heart out to the Shuck family and the Cerna family as well, and applaud them, and the Cernas in particular, for being here month after month advocating for justice. I read Ms. Martinez's response to this body's request for reconsideration with some interest, and was surprised to hear her claim that drugs in the jail are near zero, according to Ms. Martinez. I hope the body is demanding some evidence of that, because the mounting deaths suggest otherwise, or it suggests that the thing principally near zero is their level of concern for the people in their custody, because people are dying at the same rate, and whatever claim they make to have changed policy, they haven't adopted this body's recommendations. I want to spend a moment, because this body has so much pressing business in front of it. I have to talk about sort of a few different matters, and I know this group has on their agenda tonight a couple of letters stemming from the investigation of the Talavera matter as well. One of those letters is addressed to how the sheriffs are trained on the number of bullets to fire from their rounds or from their guns. Thank you for just drafting and planning to send that letter. I understand it's in a draft form, but it's immensely important. Obviously, we believe that not a single round should have been fired at Mr. Talavera, but even if you accept as true the sheriff's lies about what happened, certainly he shouldn't have suffered more than a dozen gunshot wounds. I would urge you to take a look at Deputy Young's shooting after Deputy Lovejoy, not just the initial 10 rounds by Deputy Lovejoy, and to add to that draft letter some questions about sympathetic gunfire or contagious gunfire. It's a known event in law enforcement and the military where one shooter's gunfire triggers additional shots by others. That is what happened for Deputy Young on that night. He should never have fired. He did not have a proper target, but he reacted on instinct to Deputy Lovejoy's fire. And you should ask the deputies and the sheriffs how they train on those things to prevent that instinctive response. On an administrative note, for my last couple of seconds, I'd ask the body to look back at your minutes and ensure you've made final findings on the November 28th meeting, because I'm not sure we've seen that on Talavera.
Thank you. And you're right. You have not. They've been made. The minutes have not been approved as of yet, and that's on me. All right. Next, we will go to, have I missed anybody with the Shuck family who wanted to speak who did not cede their time? Okay.
Tim Shuck ceded this time.
He did.
But Tim Scott.
Tim Scott did not. All right, Tim Scott.
Thank you. And thank you to CLERB for this time. My name is Tim Scott. I am also a lawyer at Mackenzie Scott. We are interested in the Shuck case and in these cases as a matter of civil rights for people in custody. We're also interested in these cases because we were all public defenders, and these have been our clients for decades. And for years, we have been collectively horrified and frustrated at the treatment that our in custody clients receive. And that's why many of us became civil rights lawyers after being public defenders. So thank you to CLERB for this very important work that you're doing. And we applaud it and we thank you. As to the Shuck case, the one dispute, the one objection, the one quarrel that we wanted to register as to the findings had to do with the implication that Hayden Schuck used drugs in custody. Now, I certainly don't mean to litigate this in public. We do have a pending lawsuit, but I don't want the record to be silent in terms of the family's response. The evidence will show that any drugs in Hayden's system, and there were some, were used pre-custody and were remaining from before he was incarcerated. We know that he was isolated for 6 days. We know that he simply didn't have access to other inmates or to other substances for that reason. We applaud CLERB's position in terms of screening correctional officers. We understand that it's incredibly important, and we join that call as well. We just want to make the statement that those are not the facts of the Schuck case. That being said, we agree wholeheartedly with the sustained findings that Hayden was neglected. We think that's precisely what the evidence is going to show. As his advocates, we're gratified in a way that these findings are being given voice and are being put in black and white. As community members, as parents, as people, we're horrified to see in black and white the confirmation of our understanding of what happened, but in a level of vividness and clarity that we're only just starting to learn through the litigation in the case itself. Some of the smaller details, we didn't know that he didn't have bedding and linens and some of the basic things that a human being should receive, whether they're incarcerated or not. This case is important because the way that we treat the most vulnerable among us defines us as a society. And Hayden Schuck deserved better, and San Diego deserves better. And I think that we can do better. And so we thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Andrea St. Julian.
Thank you. I am pleased to be here. And I have to say, I didn't expect to be as moved as I was by the statements that have been made. And it makes me feel that it's even more important for me to be here. My name is Andrea St. Julian. I am a co-founder and chair of San Diegans for Justice. 2 years ago, we had commissioned a report by one of the foremost experts in the country on community oversight of police. We worked with that expert and produced a 97-page report on the opportunities that this board had to really improve and to really address a lot of the things that were talked about today. We put a lot of work into that report. It started out with getting input from community members, getting input from this very board, and again, having some really in-depth expert analysis of what should be done, and also many of the good things that the board was doing. At the end of that 97-page report was a list of 70 recommendations that should be implemented to help this board really fulfill its mission. After that, we presented that report and you all went to work. And I am pleased to remind you that you all agreed with 68 of those 70 recommendations. And I want to once again thank you for that. We are here 2 years later with many, if not most of those recommendations still not implemented. And the biggest reason why is because the County Board of Supervisors has to approve many of those recommendations. And because we did not have a full board of supervisors, it really wasn't possible to go forward. We now have a full board, County Board of Supervisors. And I have read the proposed letter that you will be sending to the County Board of Supervisors asking them to make some changes. What I was very puzzled by is the request for change is only a small fraction of the 68 recommendations that this very board approved. if I can reference some of the statements, for example, that Ms. Shuck said, and asking you to sit and think about what's going on here. I imagined what you all were thinking and what was going through your head. And I thought, probably they're thinking, we just don't have the ability to address some of these things, we only have so much authority in terms of the sheriff's department.
Ms. St. Julian.
Yes,
Your
I'm
time.
so sorry. Please, I would very much appreciate you passing on all 68 of the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Pintar, we have several requests to speak online. No Deanna, correct? Okay. We will go to Darwin Fishman, Dr. Fishman.
Good evening. Thank you. Darwin Fishman, Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego, he, him, his. Hopefully you can hear me. I wanted to start by supporting the impacted families. I've given testimony, and it's really powerful. Last time I spoke to you guys, I talked about my own experience in jail, and the treatment I received was not on level of what impacted families described. But I certainly had enough experiences when I was in jail in Northern California as a young man to know that if you don't have civilian oversight that operates properly, you can have the kind of culture that's been created in our current sheriff department where clearly they don't care. And I really appreciate the Shuck family and the lawyers being there. Again, it's heart-wrenching as someone that lives in San Diego to read in the newspaper day after day about how, not just that there's in custody deaths, but how these people are dying, not provided food, not provided shower. It's just incredible. It just begs the question of whether or not you exist and have any power or say in terms of civilian oversight. And so I want to also thank you for what you're trying to do. And if you're introducing for a third time the recommendation for everyone being screened, including sheriff deputies for drugs, great, do it. If they obviously, Sheriff Martinez rejects it a third time, I understand you've done a press release and you attempt in that sense to continue to escalate. What I want to recommend is, of course, and this fits exactly with what Andrea said, actually, and I didn't know you were coming tonight, is that you go to the supervisors and not just on the recommendations she suggested, but talk to them. We're going to be there. I'm on the ATI board, Alternatives to Incarceration, March 12th. Come there, talk about the cases you're looking at, tell them you need help. They control the budget for the sheriff's department. You can talk about how they've rejected your proposal. It doesn't have to just be on Paul. Any of you can go there and give testimony. You don't have to divulge personal information. You can talk about how bad the conditions are, how difficult it is oversight with the sheriff's department, and how unwilling they are to work with you. It's important that that record and that information gets out there. The media coverage is great. Continue to do that. Find other pressure points and continue to do the work that you're doing and continue to partner with the community. Go back to the town halls, include us in this. We're a partner with your work. So I wanted to thank you for what you've done. There's a lot more open to you. And clearly, as Yusuf laid out, it's already out of control this year with the 3 deaths and what we're on par for over 24. So this is the time to intervene, not wait till we have another record-setting year like 2022. And again, you don't want more families keep coming to you to talk about the stories that they share, these heart-wrenching stories about the neglect, the horrible care they're getting, the horrible management of the jails. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work.
And thank you, Dr. Fishman. Next, we will go to Karen Remus. Ms. Remus, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me, Mr. Parker?
Yes, ma'am. Your time starts now.
Thank you. Good evening, CLERB members. My name is Karen Remus and my pronouns are she, her. I'd like to begin by uplifting the voices of the family members who've spoken tonight. Their courage is an example for all of us. CLERB, I applaud your January 31st, 2024 press release. Tonight, I am encouraging you to continue in this direction and take additional action, including holding a press conference regarding the failure of the Sheriff's Department to implement your scanning policy recommendation. I also urge you to ask the Board of Supervisors for an opportunity to brief them at one of their public meetings on this and other CLERB policy recommendations that the County Sheriff's Department has rejected. Ask the Board of Supervisors for their support in your efforts to bring much needed policy changes to stem the horrifying number of in-custody deaths in San Diego County jails. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Remus. Next, we will go to Sabrina Weddle. Ms. Weddle.
Hello, my name is Sabrina Weddle. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, I'm the older sister of Saxon Rodriguez. For those of you that don't know, Saxon Rodriguez died in San Diego Central Jail in 2021. He died off of fentanyl and methamphetamine due to the sheriff's lack of care. They checked him at 65 minutes and 28 seconds. That 5 minutes and 28 seconds cost him his life. Unfortunately for me and my family, none of the deputies or nurses will ever be held accountable. Deputy Brian Powell, Andrew Randovich, Maxwell Rimple, Andre Ranzer were the 4 deputies responsible on July 20th, 2021, 4th floor, team 2. None of them will ever be held responsible for Saxon's death. There are also 9 nurses there that day that tried to provide care but couldn't because, again, he was dead upon arrival. Melissa Burns, Reggie Barreto, Carrie Covello, Ria Encarnacion, Caitlin Hendricks, Marlena Banza, Kelly Payne, Levy Santos, and Chantel Williams. We've heard from Melissa Burns here at CLERB that she believes jail is the best place to receive treatment from an overdose, which just proves the statement that drugs are continuing to get into the facility. We've seen Alan Rozewski get charged earlier this month or last month and got 2 years probation for having cocaine in his car. Last time I checked, having drugs on premises, you should be sentenced to about a year minimum, but I guess being a sheriff, you get away with whatever. I do want to address the fact that the last time we were at CLERB, I asked if the back row could introduce themselves. That being the lieutenants, the people that are returning the message to Kelly Martinez. However, they scattered like roaches when the meeting was up. So I'm not sure if you guys can pass along your card to somebody like the Cernas. You guys literally ran out like Kelly Martinez during the debate. I know we're here to talk about a third time presenting scanning the deputies. I've watched time and time again outside of San Diego County Jail, the deputies walk in groups. They have lunch bags like they're staying for months at a time. What are in these bags? I ask them all the time, is it Chipotle or fentanyl? And they laugh at me like it's funny. But CLERB already determined that the drugs that killed my brother were preventable. They weren't kept from within inside. Like I said, Chula Vista PD sent Saxon's drugs home after he was dead, so he didn't die off of his own supply. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there today. Sabrina Shuck, I want to send my love to you. This is a long journey. Like you said, it hasn't even begun, and our family and everybody there is here for you and this journey. And
Sorry, Ms. Weddle, your time is up. I apologize.
no.
Next, we will go to Sunday Weddle. Bear with me for a minute. Sunday Weddle, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening. I'm Sunday Weddle here this evening representing North County Equity and Justice Coalition. I am the mother of Saxon Frederick Rodriguez, who died in Central Jail in July of 2021 of a fentanyl overdose. Since his death 2.5 years ago, I have monitored the sheriff's open data website regarding the number of suspected overdoses and Narcan deploys in San Diego jails in order to compare if in fact the numbers have gone down like Kelly Martinez is claiming. However, the numbers have not been updated on the website since December of last year. And with already 3 deaths this year, that seems really suspicious, like something's trying to be hidden. Anyway, I'm asking again for Kelly Martinez to scan the deputies, staff, and all persons entering the jails in order to keep the drugs out. And this information about suspected overdoses and Narcan deploys needs to be updated and made available to the public now. In 2023, last year, there were a total of 156 suspected drug overdoses, or as I like to call it, a near-death experience. 540 Narcan deploys. In 2022, there was 202 suspected drug overdoses, 845 Narcan deploys. And in 2021, the year that my son died, there was 206 suspected drug overdoses, 612 Narcan deploys. And just to remind everyone that the year he died, 2021, Narcan was not available to the inmates. Only the deputies had the ability to administer Narcan to inmates. I will always wonder where the drugs came from, how the drugs got into the jail, how my son Saxon was able to gain access to the poisonous drug fentanyl that killed him. I believe that someone working on the 4th floor the morning of July 20th, 2021 knows. They know the answer to those questions. I want to send my heartfelt condolences to the family of Hayden Shuck. I am so very sorry for your loss. And I just want to say, if we can continue to recommend Kelly Martinez scan all the staff and deputies, anyone that enters the San Diego jails, and to my son, Saxon Frederick Rodriguez, may you rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we will go to Deanna Cern. Ms. Cerna, are you there? Deanna? Deanna Cerna, you're still muted, it looks like. Can you try to unmute? Okay, we'll come back to Ms. Cerna, or at least we'll try to come back to Ms. Cerna. Next, we will go to Leslie Crawford. Ms. Crawford, are you there?
Yes, sir, I think I am. I'm representing North County Equity and Justice, Yusuf Miller, and I want all 68, if possible, to go to the San Diego County supervisors. My son had schizophrenia, and I was unable to get him good care before he ended up into the institution. And my heart bled this week as Cheryl Clausen tried to find her son in San Bernardino. And I remember what my attorney had said, that when San Diego transfers someone with a mental condition, they send them to San Bernardino, whatever, the P word, because they don't have anything in this county. But when they let them out, because they are adults, they don't notify any loved ones. They let them out on the streets of a county where they don't know any contacts, they don't know where they are, and there's schizophrenia. This has happened so many times, and it breaks my heart because it's a systemic problem that San Diego County, like other counties, they don't handle mental health problems. And It's not even just about drugging people and letting them die. It's the fact that they are very fragile and need extra care. And there's got to be some kind of way, even if someone is an adult, that you can notify next of kin or someone in their contacts so they don't wander the streets helpless. It's really important that you give every one of these recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. We're bleeding out here. We need help, and you're all we have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we will try Deanna Cerna again. Hopefully we'll get better luck here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry. Can I give my time to Yusuf Miller, please?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller.
Again, my name is Yusuf Miller, the North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody campaign. And as you can see, that most of our families since 2020 have been baptized in tears for these families and these lost loved ones. I want to thank you for the Shuck family for sharing and being here as well. Our hearts go out to you. We are a family resource for families to come together and fight and support and change, make legislative change and policy change that will make that there's not another Hayden that goes unresolved in this county, not another Saxon Rodriguez, not another Lisa Cerna, not another Matthew Settles or Kevin Mills, not another Mr. Vogelman, not another of any of these people who have lost their lives in custody, who would be anonymous if it wasn't for families sticking together. We come here in support of these families, and these families want change. Transparency and accountability is not the enemy to this issue going on. It is the solution. It is the absolute solution for us having transparency. The Elisa Cerna lost her life in 2019. It wasn't until 2023 that they got the critical incident report on Elisa Cerna's death. This is insult to injury. This is pressure, and it is shame that it takes this long for family to get some kind of closure and whether they can move forward. We have other people, the Saxon Rodriguez. His family still doesn't have a clear understanding of what happened to Saxon. They have redacted full transparency escapes the Weddle family to this day, and many others that I could go on and on. Our beloved Kevin Mills, his family is still waiting for justice, somebody to at least hear the Mills family, and we have nothing. What we have the CLERB. The CLERB has come a long way, and I want to thank Mr. Parker and everyone on this dais for doing what you do. I want to thank you for staying in there and fighting the fight, even when you get a no answer from the Sheriff's Department, that you push and fight and push and fight. We push and fight along with you. We push and fight along with you for free. This is our time. This is our gas. This is our family members, our loved ones. We're here because it's the right thing to do. And we ask that you stand here and you take our backs with us and stand up for the right thing to do. Those 68 recommendations should go to the Board of Supervisors, just like the CLERB promised. The CLERB promised me, the CLERB promised you all, and the CLERB promised the families that they would take these 68 and take them to the Board of Supervisors. And we expect that that promise be kept. We now have 5 on the Board of Supervisors, and we expect those 5 to see all 68 of these great, wonderful recommendations. Thank you.
Mr. Parker, do we have any other members of the public wishing to speak?
We have a few more requests to speak that have come in via email.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I have some to read into the record, but I still have a few to call over.
Got it. Okay.
So at this point, we'll go to Robin Sales. Robin Sales, are you there?
Yes. Good evening, CLERB. I've talked to you many times as a member of Showing Up for Racial Justice North County, and I'm here today Also, as a member of the Behavioral Health Advisory Board, I'm actually the current chair for the next 2 years. And there are two issues I wanted to talk to you about today. One is, like you at the Behavioral Health Advisory Board, we hear family members come and talk about the travesty of their loved ones not getting the treatment that they need in a timely manner, many whom end up in our county jails. So it is very concerning that the county jails are actually the primary source of behavioral health care in this county, when we all know that they do a very poor job of providing that kind of care. And you've heard all of our families talk about that. My heart hurts for those families, and I know yours must hurt listening to the families today with their very sad stories of loss. I'm particularly concerned about two issues. One, of course, is the scanning of all personnel from the sheriff's department and their contractors coming into the county jails. It isn't a very difficult thing for the sheriff to accomplish, to have people scanned. But time and time again, the sheriff says, we are doing a great job and we don't need to scan our employees because they would never bring drugs to jail. And we know this is false. And we know that drugs are getting in. And we know people are using the Narcan. And it's a really sad statement to brag about how many people have used Narcan, because drugs are getting into jail and people are dying. The second issue is CLERB absolutely needs jurisdiction over medical personnel. My heart goes out to the Cerna family, and the travesty of the trial, the criminal trial, is that both the prosecutor and the defense said that the medical and mental health, behavioral health system in the jails is terrible, poor, and it's a systemic issue. Now, when you hear from both sides of the coin in a criminal justice trial, pointing fingers at the poor medical and mental health care, there is a real problem. So I exhort you to go to the Board of Supervisors and say, we demand, the county demands, CLERB demands, and the people of San Diego demand better care and more justice for folks in our jails. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hales. Vice Chair Pintar, we have at least 5 requests for me to read into the record, if I have your permission to do so. Actually, it looks like we have one additional request to speak online.
Of course.
So let's go to Mary Best. Mary Best,
Yes, I didn't think I'd be available. Can you hear me?
we can hear you just fine.
Great. I didn't think I'd be available, so I wanted to make sure that I had something in writing. My name is Mary Best, and I'm a San Diego resident. You know, just echoing what everyone has said tonight, it's really beyond distressing to be here yet again, requesting transparency by the Sheriff's Department to institute body scans of all department staff. You know, it's especially disturbing when this urgent request has been made by CLERB more than once and ignored each time. The department's refusal to implement a policy to ensure transparency and accountability, but most importantly, to save lives in custody and develop trust, beginning trust in the law enforcement's commitment to the community's safety, is really beyond comprehension. Their message is clear. San Diego Sheriff's Department is untouchable. It's above the law. It doesn't need to be accountable to the citizens of San Diego it purports to serve. And even as yet, this young person, 22-year-old Hayden Schuck, has needlessly died in custody. San Diegans deserve better. We've heard this before, but San Diegans, the citizens in this community, deserve better. Thank you, CLERB members, for stepping up and standing firm on this issue in the service of the citizens of San Diego. Thank you so much. Continue doing this really critical work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Pintar, I have, I think, 4 or 5 to read into the record. The first one will be from Debbie Kamens. Thank you, CLERB, for your repeated urgings that the Sheriff's Department scan all staff entering the jails. Please continue pushing the department for this change and speaking publicly about their failure to adequately respond. Their delay in implementing such an essential deterrent as random body scans is harming our community. Sheriff Martinez claimed the department has reduced drugs in the jails to almost zero. But of the 3 individuals who have already died in custody after only 1.5 months in 2024, 1 possibly died from drugs smuggled into the jails. We'll continue demanding the Sheriff's Department implement and participate in body scanning to protect these family members from such a tragic death. The next will be from Donna Gerhauser. My name is Donna Gerhauser, and I'm a constituent of County Supervisor Tara Lawson-Reamer, District 3. I want to thank CLERB for issuing the February 7th press release, and I request that you continue to push your policy recommendation to scan all people entering detention facilities. I urge you to partner with the County Board of Supervisors regarding all your recommendations to the Sheriff's Department. 0 is the only acceptable number of in-custody deaths. Next, we will go to, or the next comes from Deidre McLeod. My name is Deidre McLeod, and I'm a constituent of Board Supervisor Joel Anderson, District 2. My pronouns are she and her. I'd like to thank CLERB staff and board members for continuing to keep the issue of body scanning all Sheriff's Department employees at the forefront. Your press release publicly calling out Sheriff Martinez for twice rejecting this CLERB policy recommendation was much appreciated. That the department continues to leave off the table such a significant deterrent to drug trafficking in our jails is unacceptable. While they cite other actions taken to reduce overdoses and deaths as the reason for rejecting staff scans, most of those practices they now tout were adopted only after extreme public pressure from state oversight, the grand jury, community organizations, local news, impacted families, and the CLERB. Please reissue for the 3rd time your recommendation that all staff be scanned when entering the jails, and let the department know that the pressure over this issue is not going away either. Next, and looks like maybe perhaps final request to be read into the record is from Tom Packard. Dr. Packard writes, the November 29th, 2023 response to your recommendation to scan all staff for drugs is inadequate. In the last century, I worked for both the county and city of San Diego, where my jobs included occasionally preparing and reviewing materials for the board or council. Using standards of that time, which I hope are even higher now, the response from the sheriff can be seen as reflecting, quote, incomplete staff work, end quote. There is no evidence that they seriously studied this as a proposal, which would have involved searching for and examining best practices and conducting a detailed analysis of costs and benefits for options to screen all staff. I strongly encourage you to push the sheriff to do more work and provide much more evidence on exactly what they have done and will do regarding a detailed analysis, including costs and benefits, to implement the recommendation. Including payments for lawsuits involving drugs in the jails could be included in this cost analysis, recognizing the complexities of connecting payments to drugs in the jails, which could have been prevented by better screenings. I understand that they are sensitive to protecting security in their facilities by not revealing, quote, too much of our methods regarding all screening processes, end quote. They could provide a full analysis on this recommendation without revealing any information that would compromise security. They assert that they have, quote, practices in place that actively work to identify and address any employee and or staff misconduct in this area, end quote, and a, quote, strategy to plug the gaps, end quote, in their security, and they list methods ending with, among other measures. They say they include, quote, everyone who enters and or conducts business in our detention facilities in one or various of these methods, including all staff. Specifically, which methods include all staff? If sharing any of this information with the public might in fact compromise security, at least insist that they share that information with you. They assert that the amount of drugs entering facilities is, quote, almost zero, end quote. They ask for please ask for specific data regarding each discovery of drugs in each facility. Thank you for your attention and for continuing to push on this recommendation. And that, I believe, concludes requests for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. I want to extend condolences from this board to every family member who's here tonight. I know our hearts go out to all of you. I think I can speak on behalf of my colleagues saying that, and we thank you for continuing to show up and be a voice to your loved ones, and we're very sorry for your loss. Mr. Parker, I'd also like to ask if you could please bring back to the board at a future meeting research and bring back to the board information about the Sheriff's Department's protocol for alcohol withdrawal. I know that we have spent a great deal of time as we've reviewed these cases looking at how illegal drugs are withdrawal from drugs, but I don't think we've spent much time talking about the alcohol withdrawal protocol. So I'd like to see that at a future meeting if we could do that.
I can definitely do that. And just so there's no confusion, as we know we don't have jurisdiction over medical staff. However, that is a perfectly appropriate recommendation to make for me to come back because we do have jurisdiction over all policies and procedures to review them and to bring that back. So I will work with, let me look at it myself and I'll bring something back at the next meeting to give an overview to what the policies say that they should do in regards to this topic.
Thank you. We will now move to item number 3 on our agenda. I believe that we don't have minutes tonight, so we are going to have to approve the most recent minutes at a future meeting. We're also going to move past number 4. We did have on the agenda tonight a presentation training about our CLERB investigators, their process for investigations, but the 3 members of our board who are most interested in hearing that presentation are not here tonight. So we're going to do that also at a future meeting. In addition to that rationale or that reason, we have quite a bit of new business to discuss. So we're going to go ahead and move straight to the executive officer's report. Mr. Parker.
I'm going to make the executive officer's report extremely brief, Vice Chair Pintar. The most important thing that this staff has done over the last month is, quite frankly, we moved locations. We used to be at 555 West Beach. For several years, I've fought to get into this building, to be considered as on par with other county departments. And we finally have made that happen. And that's thanks to be honest with you, that's thanks to our chief deputy, Narissa Cock, who's not here tonight, but also to the Finance and General Government Group. We are no longer in the Public Safety Group. We're in the Finance and General Government Group with the county. So Ebony Shelton and Joan Brocky from that group, they made this happen. It's a big deal for us because we are now here. And we now can get to interact with other county departments and other decision makers. And they walk past us and they see CLERB on the glass door as they walk by. And I think it's a great step. It's an acknowledgement that we're no longer relegated to off-site. So thank you very much for the county folks that made that happen. With that, that will conclude my executive officer report because the one attachment, you can have attachments B and C, which are the workload reports from the last couple of months. We know that, for example, in January of 2023, we only had 11 cases reported to us. Last month, we had 23. So we are staying unfortunately busy, and we will continue to move forward and try our best to get the appropriate staffing to keep up with the caseload and the complex and thorough investigations that our folks have been doing these last year and a half. So with that, I will defer back to you, Vice Chair Pintar, and we can talk about the policy recommendation when we get to new business. That is correct.
Yes, that's perfectly fine.
Council and Vice Chair Pintar, may I piggyback on that just for a second? So in reference to that request, just so the public knows, because there was some mention about the liaisons or the folks that sit in the back of the room or whatnot. To be clear, what those folks do from both the Sheriff's Department and the Probation Department, they're the liaisons to CLERB. Okay, so and you'll see, well, in about a month and a half, we'll make a presentation about our investigative processes, and you'll see that every piece of information that we get has to go through those liaisons. Everything. We write it to them. They are the gatekeeper for the Sheriff's Department, for lack of a better term, and they're the ones that facilitate the requests that we make. So as far as the request for the sheriff to show up or whatnot, they can't make the sheriff show up. They can deliver the message. And so, and they deliver the messages just as Vice Chair Pintar is doing right now. So I will work with those liaisons. I will make sure I will put it in writing to them that this is what's being asked. They facilitate getting the information, they get it back to me or our personnel. And so just so everyone knows, that's how that works and that's their role. So hopefully that clarifies some things. And yes, I will take care of that and get that to the liaisons.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. And I think I did not turn my microphone on last time, so I apologize for that. We're now moving to number 7, new business. Item A, San Diego Sheriff's Department response to CLERB's policy recommendation to search or scan all persons entering detention facilities to include staff. I think first we must go to members of the public who wish to speak on this item. Is that correct, Mr. Parker?
Yes, I don't have any requests to speak I have one request to speak in person, and that would be Mr. Miller. I have no request to speak online just yet. Mr. Miller.
Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition Saving Lives in Custody campaign. When Kelly Martinez was first propositioned to scan the staff and deputies, one of the things she mentioned is that we don't have any data to suggest such a process for our deputies. The month after, a deputy was arrested for breaking into the drug boxes in the jail. The month following that, another deputy was arrested in the parking lot of the jail with cocaine in his car. When this same thing happened in Maricopa County, where deputies were found with drugs and bringing drugs into the jails, that sheriff, he supported the scanning of staff and deputies. What's wrong with San Diego County? Why can't we get this same thing done? This 100% contact will boost the confidence of the community, something that the sheriff's department sorely needs, sorely. If we can say that there's 100% contact in scanning all staff and deputies, at least we can divert our attention somewhere else with an honest conscience. We cannot do this right now. And before those 2 deputies were arrested, we knew what was going on. We didn't have any data outside of anecdotal statements from people who have been incarcerated. Now we have, as a matter of public record, in the press, in statements from the press and people, that these 2 deputies last year were arrested on these cases. And still we're not scanning. There's a problem, and the problem is the culture. It's a culture of stay out of our business. We know what we're doing, and we have it from here. But we can't settle for that. This process of scanning everyone will not only benefit the sheriff's department themselves, but it will give the community some confidence that we have some other routes that we need to pay attention to. And actually, those other routes have been thoroughly exhausted when it comes to what they tell us that they're doing. They're scanning the mail. They're scanning the inmates who go in. They scan visitors and things like this. Yeah, what else are you going to do? But here we have the staff and deputy coming in at will. So give the community what they're asking for. Give the CLERB what they're asking for. A sense of assurity that everyone is being checked for the sanity of the people who have lost loved ones and the people who actually know that these things are going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Now we would go to board comment on this item. Is there any member of the board wish to comment on item A? Mr. Wilson.
Is it possible to determine if the sheriff's department is testing them for you? And if so, what's the policy?
I'm sure, number one, that would be probably a personnel type of situation that has to do with the union. I may be speaking out of line here. I wouldn't know. I can research that and get that answer for you, but I'm sure that would be the deal. I think I don't know what the union would say, but I know with a lot of county employees, like if you're involved in an accident or something like that on duty, I believe that then maybe, or if there are signs of impairment or something like that, but I can research the issue for you, Mr. Wilson, and I can get back to you. Ms. Gross?
Yes, thank you. And in that regard, we can also look at the deputies' MOUs, their memorandums of understanding, and personnel-related items like that have been negotiated between the employer, the county, and the DSA would all be in those documents, and I can assist you with that, Mr. Parker.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Mr. Wilson, but wait a minute. Mr. Ware.
Thank you. Mr. Parker, is it possible to get a list?
Mr. Ware, is your microphone on? I just want to make sure that okay, sorry.
Is it possible to get a list of all the counties in the country that are scanning all employees?
I'm sure it's not possible to get a list of all of them. When we initially made this recommendation, the recommendation came from just research that we had done from other counties. And Maricopa, I think Mr. Miller had mentioned Maricopa. Maricopa was a big deal. That's Phoenix, Arizona. And it was Sheriff Penzone at the time who was doing that. So that's one of the situations that kind of caught my attention. There are other smaller agencies throughout the country that are doing it. I can try to get that information for you or for us again. Just from other information, I actually have family members that work in the jails outside of Philadelphia, and they get scanned all day, every day when they go to work. So I can find out where they work too, but I know for a fact it happens there. I can get you what I can find. I don't know how much of that's publicly available, but I'll do a good search and get back to you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson.
If possible, Mr. Parker, when we talk about the scanning, can we also talk about random drug testing? I believe, I don't have the documentation in front of me, but I believe the San Diego Police Department, all of its sworn police officers are subject to random unannounced drug testing.
Mr. Wilson, and absolutely what Ms. Gross and I will do, we'll research that and get back to you, and we'll report back at the March meeting. That's okay.
Ms. Federico Mondragon.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Wilson. I have a partner who served in the military for many years and they get randomly tested. It can happen to anyone, regardless of your profession, economic background, how much education you have. That's very real. And, just going back to really scanning folks, all people who are entering. I had a loved one who was taken into custody. And recently, not too long ago, they left, they got out. Now they have their court date, but everyone, deserves a trial, deserves to have their rights respected, and then if it's just scanning, I think it's very possible to just do that too.
Thank you. Dr. Brown?
Mr. Parker, I am interested in reviewing again or at least discussing Ms. St. Julian's list of recommendations that they came up with and see if we can get an update or something to that extent. I would really be interested in knowing where we are with that, the status of it.
If it's okay, we can come back to that when we get to that item on the agenda, unless there's something else you wanted to raise right now.
Item 7D,
When we get to
we'll dive
7D,
into that.
I would love to hear more from you about that.
Right.
Okay. Ms. Kina Ayub.
Just to clarify, we'll be resending that policy back to the Sheriff's Department for review again, correct?
Whatever you folks tell me to do.
Okay, I'm voting to resend it back exactly as worded.
So is that a motion? I believe we'd have to have a motion and a second. Okay. Motion made by Ms. Kina Ayub, seconded by Dr. Brown. And the motion again is to resend the letter. If I can, I don't want to adjust your motion, but I think when we first made this recommendation to send this letter, we had said that we would do this every time we encountered a sustained finding of illicit drugs getting into the jail. We do have, I believe we have one of those sustained findings this time. So it would be appropriate, but I think that should be standing action from this board, that when every time we sustain a finding that illicit drugs made their way into the jails, that we resend the letter. If it's okay to adjust the motion that way. Do you accept that?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Ware, do we need to take a vote or can we take comment on the motion first?
Now it's time to discuss it. Now
Okay,
there's been
okay.
a motion, and a
Sorry.
second, and your friendly amendment.
All right.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Discussion, Mr. Ware.
I just had a comment or something else, so we can go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Wilson.
Our recommendations, is it possible that we can send a copy of it when we forward it to the Board of Supervisors and the District Attorney's Office? Is that possible?
The Board of Supervisors at the end, when there are final findings, so when the policy recommendations are made through the course of a case, the clerk of the board gets the final findings report. In this case, I have not, we were going to, when I make a presentation to the Board of Supervisors in reference to the annual report, I talk about all of the policy recommendations and then brief them at that time. If you're saying that you would like the policy recommendations that are made outside of a case, which this would be, this is a standalone recommendation to be forwarded immediately to the clerk of the board as well, I can make sure that that happens. I don't think that has to be part of the motion. You just tell me to do that and I can make that happen.
Are we ready to vote on the motion then, or is there any other discussion? Okay. Am I calling the roll on this motion, Mr. Parker?
I can do it.
I can do it. I just wasn't sure
Go ahead.
since I'm fulfilling both roles tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Delaney is not present. Ms. Pintar, yes. Bonnie Kink is not present. Dr. Brown. Mr. Hayes is not present. Ms. Keen Ayub. Ms. Federico Mondragon.
Yes.
Mr. Ware.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
The motion passes. We will now go to item 7B, review and approve draft letter of concern to San Diego Sheriff's Department regarding excessive number of rounds fired by deputies during uses of deadly force. First, we will go to the public for any comments on this item.
Mr. Scott. Or Mr.
Mr. Burris, my
I
name is
apologize.
difficult.
I
Thank you, Mr.
apologize.
Parker.
I'll get you straight.
And I apologize to the board for repeating a little bit. I didn't realize we would have an opportunity for public comment on this item in particular, but I'm really grateful to the board where you didn't have the sustained findings in the Talavera incident that I believe were supported, but that you still are looking deeply at the issue underlying the shooting more broadly and thinking about it a little more broadly for its policy implications. There was no reason the deputies should have fired any rounds at Mr. Talavera, but they certainly shouldn't have fired dozens of rounds. And so the draft letter that the board's considering is a great step in the right direction to evaluate, if the first round was justified, should both deputies have shot? And it was the second round justified? And every single round that hit Mr. Talavera caused grievous injuries. It's a miracle that he is alive today. And even if an unidentified object in your hand were ever enough to shoot a man who is surrendering to law enforcement, it certainly is not justification for this type of shooting. So I mentioned earlier the issue of sympathetic gunfire, and I hate to delay the board's work because I think it's better to send an imperfect letter than to spend more time deliberating over it and risking further issues. But I would urge you to either send an additional supplemental letter or to modify this one slightly, because the issue of sympathetic gunfire is front and center in the Talavera shooting, and I'm sure many others that go unidentified. In the Talavera shooting, Deputy Lovejoy initially opened fire, immediately shooting a long, sustained burst of gunfire. That, I think, is underlying the board's concern for too many rounds being fired in incidents and trying to understand first, how are deputies trained? But within a fraction of a second, almost instantly after that initial gunfire by Deputy Lovejoy is the initial round by Deputy Young. Now, Deputy Young has a different perspective towards Mr. Talavera. Deputy Young, in that moment, I think, and it's supported by what I've reviewed of his own post-incident interview. I know the board has access to different information, but that immediate response is highly indicative that he was shooting on instinct. He did not identify a threat to himself or others in that moment. What he heard was a gunshot and reacted to the gunshot by firing. And I'd submit he knew it was Deputy Lovejoy's gunshot. I know there's some dispute from him about what he heard and what he thought, but that if you interrogate more closely, you'll understand from law enforcement and the military that sympathetic gunfire is a significant issue that can be prevented with training, and that Deputy Young fired on instinct when he should never have been, he should have been trained to resist those types of instincts and identify a specific threat to himself first. So you should ask the sheriffs what their policies are on training on sympathetic gunfire. You should ask them to train on it if they're not. And I think what you'll find is that they're not, because the post training for the state doesn't include that kind of curriculum.
Thank you, sir.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Miller and Ms. John. Mr. Miller.
Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition Saving Lives in Custody campaign. In the city of Vista in 2016, Sergio Wick was shot over 20 times in his body. And this is before Sheriff's Department was wearing body cams, in which we demanded that they at least get body cams so we can see what happened. The very next year, 1 block from that same area, Jonathan Cornell was shot over 22 times in his body, unarmed, both of them unarmed. This is a serious problem that the gentleman has raised about this sympathetic, over-the-top drilling of bodies with these bullets. It is unnecessary. It is over the top. And these young men in their 20s died unarmed while their bodies are just being blown away. This happened in Vista, the Sheriff's Department. There's not a police there. They have Sheriff's Department, but there is nothing that ever come of that. Nothing has come of that. We have to make sure that this sympathetic firing is dealt with. You have 22 shots. 22 shots, the person has been dead for 22 shots. So I just wanted to let us know that this is not new. It's not something that's that happens once in a while. This happened and within a span of a year, 1 block from each other, and it was the same deputy.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Ms. John?
My comments are directed not just to the board, but to the public as well. This incident involving the excessive number of shots fired at Mr. Talvera also had another victim. That victim's name is Detective Pau. He's a detective with the National City Police Fire. He was one of the task force members who was on scene. Because there was a fuselage of bullets just unleashed, Detective Pau got into the crossfire and was actually hit. The issue of excessive fire does not just affect the person who is shot. It is a danger to the entire community. If there are members of the public standing by, if there are other law enforcement agents standing by, it affects them as well. So I thank you, CLERB, for bringing this to the attention of the Sheriff's Department and just as importantly, bringing public attention to the issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you able to see if there's anyone online who wishes to speak to the item?
There is no one online. Secretary Kink, how are you?
Welcome.
Good evening.
Members of the board, do you wish to speak to this item? Dr. Brown?
This is questions directed at Paul, whomever on the board. Do we have any jurisdiction or do we have any input into, you know, for example, the screening of candidates? None of that, do we?
We do not.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to item 7B? If not, we could use a motion to either amend or approve the letter as written. I would like to ask Mr. Parker, I'm sorry, I did not catch the speaker's name, the attorney, Marcus Barasa. He mentioned adding, if we could ask the Sheriff's Department about what the policies are or training related to sympathetic gunfire.
That's right.
He mentioned he didn't want to delay our action. Would that delay our action, or could we just add that, make a motion to add that language and then proceed with sending the letter?
That's exactly what you could do.
Okay. Does someone want to make that motion? Mr. Wilson? Second? Ms. Federico Mondragon. Yeah, yes.
Could the motion be somehow clarified that you don't need the executive officer to bring it back? Can I just make the addition?
If that's okay with Mr. Wilson. Okay,
Thank you.
is that okay? All right. So we have we have a motion and we have a second. But Ms. Kink, can you call the roll for the vote? Yes.
Bonnie Kink, yes. Dr. Brown,
Yes.
Nadia Keen Ayub. Ariana Federico Mondragon,
Yes.
Tim Ware,
Yes.
G.I. Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
But is it on the next item or is it on the item that we just passed? I don't know if we can speak to that item now that we voted. On item 7B or is it on item 7C? Okay,
You can make the comment, but it will not change the vote unless the motion is withdrawn and. Okay.
Actually more about the question I asked. The reason I presented that question is that we know the majority of most law enforcement people are just great people. But, and I was asking about the screening because sometimes people who maybe shouldn't be law enforcement get through the screening process out of high. And that was my reason for asking, it didn't say share out, but majority of the good hardworking people who know. But sometimes it's just maybe some that just get through a higher without more, more attention paid to that job, that issue. And that's the reason I asked. If you know of anything that we could probably propose that would help with that.
No, I think that the motion and the letter is a start. It starts the conversation. It allows for CLERB and the public to know what's being trained or what's not being trained. If the department chooses to answer the question and respond to the letter, then I think we can have a more robust conversation afterwards.
thank you. And I'm sorry, Mr. Ware.
I just want to piggyback on Dr. Brown's comments. And I don't know if it's appropriate to do this, but I've never heard of sympathetic gunfire. And I know that Mr. Wilson, Mr. Parker has that experience. And I don't know if we can hear from them on what they think about that, or is that something for another time?
I would defer to council with whether we can open up that conversation now that we've voted on the motion.
Yes, at this time, unless you want to take the motion off the table to fully explore in any further comments and extra comments that you may have, that's what we would have to do procedurally.
Okay.
Would you like to do that?
No, it's not, I don't want to change it. I just want to be
Okay.
educated.
Okay.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we just put the motion to the side, finish the comments, and then we can do it again very quickly.
Okay, let's do that. Mr. Parker or Mr. Wilson, would you like to address Mr. Ware's question?
No, I mean, have I heard of the term? Absolutely. Have we been trained? Was I trained on it when I was a police officer like years and years ago? Absolutely. I can't speak to the specifics of this case because a lot of that was confidential information that you folks discussed in closed session. But do I think that the amendment that was requested and that you folks approved is appropriate? I absolutely do. Absolutely do. And I think it's something that it's great for us to know.
Mr. Wilson, did you want to add anything?
I concur with Mr. Parker's comments, but there is research on this. My own personal opinion is that I often hear that the officer or the Marine, soldier, and sailor was in fear of their life. That doesn't mean they should be firing a weapon in fear. That's the last thing that we want. And there's ways to mitigate and train to that. So saying, well, I was in fear of my life, that's one thing. But having a weapon in a professional's hands who is operating on fear is unacceptable.
Thank you. If that concludes the discussion, I think we need to vote on the motion one more time. Did you make the motion? I don't remember who made the initial motion.
It was Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Wilson, would you like to make the motion one more time?
So moved that we send the letter forward amended without.
Amended with the letter, the language requesting
Sympathetic.
a reference or yes, information about the training on sympathetic gunfire. Thank you. And the second was Ms. Federico Mondragon. Ms. Kent, can you call the roll? Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
With that, we'll move to item 7C, review and approve draft letter of concern to the Sheriff's Department regarding communication failures during the Talavera case. We don't need a report. We can go straight to public comment. Okay. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak to this item 7C, either in person or online? Yeah.
Mr. Barassa.
I'm Marcus Barossa, attorney at Mackenzie Scott. Thanks for indulging me this evening. This case is near and dear to me because our firm represents Mr. Talavera. I just wanted to emphasize my gratitude to the board for drafting these letters and planning to send them. I think one issue lurking behind the communications question at the heart of this letter is the San Diego Sheriff's Department's policies on hot stops, where deputies arrive on scene, unsure what's going on, and immediately go to guns drawn, pointed at a citizen who's a suspect of a crime. Here, the communication problems contributed to the hot stop problem because the detectives on scene who had been surveilling Mr. Talavera before he was shot knew that he posed no danger, had been observing him for several minutes, but had no way of communicating that to the deputies who were lost, made wrong turns, didn't know where they were, and heard what the suspect looked like seconds before they arrived on scene and were drawing their guns and pointing them at a member of the public. And so that communication issue made the hot stop policy particularly dangerous. And so I hope the board looks closely at the hot stop policies and behavior of police arriving on scene, but the communications issue underlying it is wonderful to see the board addressing. Thank you.
Thank you.
With no other members of the public wishing to speak on this item, are there any board members who wish to speak on item 7C? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the draft letter? Ms. Keen-Ayub made the motion and Mr. Wilson seconded it. Move along to item 7D. Approve.
Whoops, hold on. We
Oh,
need
I'm sorry.
any more discussion and then a vote.
Any more discussion? Moving us along. Any more discussion? Okay, Ms. Kent, can you call the roll? Yes.
Bonnie King, yes. Dr. Brown?
Yes.
Nadia Keen-Ayub?
Yes.
Ariana Federico Mondragon?
Yes.
Tim Ware?
Yes.
G.I. Wilson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Now we can move to item 7D. Approve proposed revisions to administrative code and CLERB's rules and regulations to forward to the Board of Supervisors. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item?
Andrea St. Julian. I know she spoke in public comment and touched on this. So.
Yes, please,
Okay.
please proceed.
Thank you. I think my biggest concern is that I may have more faith in CLERB than maybe CLERB has in itself. You have the ability to make real change and to meet the needs of family members that are here today. But you have to make sure that you have the ability to do it. You have got to recommend to the County Board of Supervisors the changes that are necessary to give you the power to make real change. Don't be afraid of asking for that power and the ability that you need. And that's why San Diegans for Justice worked so hard to get you that 97-page report that has 68 recommendations that you yourselves decided that you really wanted and needed. You need to follow through and have the courage of your conviction. There are so many things, and I certainly can't go through all 68, but I'll just touch on a few. You really need to expand your jurisdiction to oversee all personnel. How many times have you had something come before you and not been able to really look at the situation fully because you don't have jurisdiction over all of the personnel? You have to have expanded authority to oversee and understand and give input to the functioning of the departments. You need to fully embrace your potential to fully audit and monitor the departments that you oversee. You don't have those abilities, but you need to recommend to the County Board of Supervisors that you have them so you can truly fulfill your mission. You have to expand your access to the department documents and information that you get from the departments. Making decisions based on information that is late or that is not complete doesn't serve you or the community well. Everything that can be public, that can be made public, must be made public. If there isn't true transparency, the community will never trust you. And last, but certainly not least, one of the most shocking things in the report that we prepared was that CLERB is very, very underfunded compared to comparable boards and commissions across this country. You get a fraction of the money, and because of that, you are underfunded. You don't have the staff that you need. You don't have the equipment that you need. You need to expand, and you need to embrace your mission and make sure you have a path to fulfill that mission. Thank you.
Ms. Chen?
Good evening, Grace Jen again. I just wanted to piggyback off those comments about expanding CLERB's jurisdiction over medical service providers in the San Diego County jail system. And I want to talk again about Elisa Serna's case because the Serna family is here and they have agitated for change for many, many years now. I want to talk about one person in particular. Her name is Dr. Von Lintig. I noticed that CLERB is seeking to expand its jurisdiction to include contract medical providers, and I think that is extraordinary. I applaud your efforts. I encourage you to pursue that change. And here is why. The Sheriff's Department itself does not believe it has the ability to oversee or monitor contract medical providers. For example, they will not conduct internal affairs investigations of contract providers because they feel that's not their personnel and they don't have jurisdiction over contract medical providers. What that meant in Elisa Serna's case is this. There was a doctor named Dr. Von Lintig who was criminally prosecuted for involuntary manslaughter for Elisa Serna's death. She, 1 year before, had been involved in the care of a woman named Colleen Garreau. Her care of Colleen Garreau was so abysmal and so deficient that Colleen had a catastrophic stroke. She ended up paralyzed. She couldn't even use her legs. She couldn't move. She had to wear a diaper. That medical provider was allowed to continue working at the Sheriff's Department. About 1 year and 6 months later, she encountered Elisa Serna. She allowed Elisa Serna to die. She knew Elisa was suffering from seizures. She knew Elisa was suffering from alcohol withdrawal. She knew Elisa was at high risk of death. And what did she do in response to that? She accused Elisa of faking it. She accused Elisa of malingering. She accused Elisa of seeking secondary gain. She dismissed everything that Elisa was suffering. When Elisa suffered a seizure at 3:30 p.m. on November 11th, 2019, Dr. Von Lintig didn't even bother to go back. Elisa Serna died because of that. And if CLERB is able to expand its jurisdiction to include contract medical providers, hopefully, God willing, we can prevent another Elisa Serna. We can prevent another Dr. Von Lintig. And what I would urge this board to do is when you go to the Board of Supervisors, say Elisa Serna's name. Talk about Dr. Von Lintig. Talk about Colleen Garreau, because this is a tragedy and it can be remedied and it should be remedied. Thank you.
Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody campaign. I want to add another name, Nurse Pasqua. Nurse Pasqua was also involved in this litigation against Nurse Pasqua for the death of Elisa Serna. Now, Elisa Serna's case happened in 2019. And people see these kind of cases like Dr. Van Lentig as a one-of issue. No. Nurse Pasqua, before Elisa Serna, had chipped the tooth of another inmate, another incarcerated personnel. As we're chanting and standing in front of the courthouse, talking about Nurse Pasquale and what she's done in neglect of Lisa Serna, another woman totally, we had no idea who this woman was, walked by and said, "You talking about Nurse Pasquale? She beat me up while I was in custody." This is what we have going on rampant because we have no oversight, no true oversight. When you ask incarcerated people, how do you report people of the medical staff who are not treating you right? They have no idea. So what I did, I asked the sheriff's department, what is the process? They said, no, everyone is told that they can report medical personnel as well. No one I know of knows that. As I interview people to verify that, no one knows how to report medical staff. We need to get a handle on this medical staff because it's costing us loved ones' lives. So this Von Lintig issue would not have happened if she was caught ahead of time. This Nurse Pasqua issue would not have happened if she was caught ahead of time. Thank you.
Mr. Parker, are there any other members of the public online that wish to speak to this item?
No, there are not.
Okay. With that, we will move to board comments on the item, which is 7D. Any members of the board wish to speak to this? Yes, Ms. Federico Mondragon.
I think we talked about this, was it the summer? That we were gonna send some recommendations. I can't remember what we decided.
May I give a brief, is that appropriate?
Please
Yeah.
do. Mhm.
Okay, so in January, February, March, April, and October of 2023, we discussed these things. And at one of those meetings, Ms. St. Julian showed up on behalf of San Diegans for Justice and made her presentation to you folks. Prior to that, Ms. St. Julian had a press conference. It was in March, I believe, of last, the time is flying. So I think it was last March or something, but in which she had the Dr. Fairley's report. And that's where the 70 areas for potential growth and improvement were identified. And so I believe it was either last March or April, maybe slightly before that, where the CLERB said, yes, we'll move forward with 68 of those. Out of those 68, about 20-ish need movement from this board and the Board of Supervisors. The others are internal, the things that I can do and that we as staff are doing to update our policies and our internal practices. But out of the 20 that need the board, they need your approval to take it to the Board of Supervisors. Out of the 20, about, I don't know, 16 or 17 of those are not on the list this evening. What you folks decided to do was to prioritize moving forward to the Board of Supervisors. And so to prioritize doing that, you chose 3 topics. One was to codify the current practices, some of the things that we were already doing, and some of the things that came out of the audit of the Sheriff's Department and CLERB, as far as natural deaths and having a timeline to complete the death investigations, to make those the top priority. So things like that. But then the thing that this board was very, very adamant about was to talk about the expansion or to try to get the expansion of medical service providers. So that's number 2. So you folks are going to, you want me, if you vote for this again this evening, you'll allow me to move forward and at least bring that forward, the medical service providers, to include the contract medical service providers. And the other thing that you folks wanted to prioritize at that time was to eliminate the 1-year time limit for receipt of certain complaints. Okay, so we had that. And so what we did was, even though, and no matter how many times departments here at the county will reach out to other oversight entities or ask me questions about it, almost every other oversight entity and every law enforcement entity, they don't have time limits on cases that are reported to them. If someone says that a deputy did this or that, and it was 5 years ago and it's egregious, the department will look into it. But we, as an attempt to compromise, we listed some of the serious things you folks agreed. 5 years would be our limit. And those things are serious, things resulting in great bodily injuries or deaths or whatever. And then we knocked it down. We used the PC 832.7 categories for 3 years for some things, because before it was just a year, right? So then 3 years for dishonesty or false arrest and things like that. And then all the rest of 1 year. So you folks allowed permission to do that. So those were 16 items in total. And then in October, we brought back a couple of other items. And during that time, you folks agreed to allow us to move forward with expansion of our jurisdiction, or at least try to get the expansion to include the annual inspection of all county juvenile detention facilities. And then also to include only audits, not monitoring, but audits. So those are now the 18 items in front of you this evening. But I will say, just as a matter of background, some of the areas that are concerning, I think, to the county and to everybody else is the audit component. Other oversight entities conduct audits. They do. So you're not asking me to do anything different if you decide to move forward with that than some other agencies have done. Juvenile detention facility inspections. Only 2 other oversight entities in this, only 1 other oversight entity in this state does probation, and that's LA. So we have a prime opportunity here to assist probation in providing its best possible service. So you can ask any other county, but they're not going to know other than us in LA. So that is groundbreaking if you allow us to do that. The time limits is what it is. And medical personnel, other oversight entities, they have that ability too. Not all of them, but some of them. So the things that we're asking for may be groundbreaking here, but they're not. I mean, I was hoping, and I know that this CLERB in the conversations last year, this CLERB and staff wanted to be like a gold standard, like what we could do to have civilian oversight relevant and mean something, to have some kind of teeth, at least. And we've done that. We have an audience tonight. We have a great board that's willing to move forward with a lot of these things. To Ms. St. Julian's point, there are many items that are not moving forward because this board said, let's take this piecemeal. Let's take this piecemeal. If I think that's the correct terminology. So that's why we have the 18 items right now. The other items that are not moving forward, unless you folks change your mind or, direct me to do something different. And now as far as the process, what we were initially told was that these items that we're talked about, we can move forward, really start doing meet and confer. That's initially what we were told was going to happen. But now, which is great because now we actually have the correct guidance, which is this CLERB approves whatever they want me to take to the Board of Supervisors, and that's what we do. We go to the Board of Supervisors, whatever the Board of Supervisors says, go forth, and now go to meet, now talk to the unions, now try to make this happen. That's the next step. So that's where we are. That's a recap of how we got to where we are tonight. I hope that was sufficient.
That's very helpful. It's been a while and we did have several meetings about this, but I think it would be helpful for the members of the public just to explain what meet and confer is, because that is a big, yes, council could do that. That is a big hurdle, and why medical oversight is an enormous step for this board and for this investigating body. And if you could explain a little bit about that.
Certainly. Thank you, Vice Chair Pintar. So what meet and confer is it's the procedure based in both law and policy that requires an employer, such as the County of San Diego, to meet with its labor unions. It's recognized bargaining groups. And those include the Deputy Sheriff's Association, the San Diego County Probation Officers Association, the Supervising Probation Officers Association, and then I believe that they also cover the medical providers and SEIU.
Service International.
Yes, represents them. So the County of San Diego has a labor relations management team, and they go out and would assist in meeting and conferring. And what is required for meet and confer is anything that can impact the working conditions, terms and conditions of employment of the affected employees. So in California, it can be very broad. So it takes a lot of time. And where it's a policy change that doesn't require a full meet and confer, there are still the impacts. So the county may say, this is our policy and we're going to put that on all of you employees. But then the employees can come back and say, well, we're not done. We have a right to bargain over the impacts to our terms and working conditions. So it is a whole cottage industry in and of itself. It does take time, but it is essential to the process where we have public employee organizations, and it cannot be done quickly. And as Chair Pintar, Vice Chair Pintar pointed out, medical provider jurisdiction would be a huge addition for all the reasons that you folks have talked about and very articulately set forth. But it does have to be a process. So the first step for tonight would be for the board to accept and ask Mr. Parker and myself to move forward with getting it to the Board of Supervisors, seeing what they say, and then going through meet and confer. And the good thing is that with the Board of Supervisors, there will be plenty of opportunity for you all and members of the public to make your concerns known to them at their venue, at Board of Supervisors meetings, much as you do here. Thank you.
Is there any other members of the board that wish to comment? I think Mr. Ware and then Mr. Wilson.
Is
And
that
then Dr.
comment-
Brown.
Is that comment on the 68 recommendations?
Related to this item, either the recommendations before us, or if there's anything you want to say about the additional recommendations, I
Yeah,
think that's
was
appropriate here
thank you,
too.
Mr. Parker, for providing information. I would hope to give an athletic term that we scout ourselves to see if where we are is where we want to be, and if where we're going is where we want to go at the pace we want to go to. So at some pace, sometime in the future, if we can kind of discuss where we are with those items to see if that's where we want to be.
Mr. Wilson?
I concur with Mr. Ware. My concern is this: do we know if it's the sheriff's policy or their opinion or their legal authority or contractually where they take the position they do not have any jurisdiction over the contract medical personnel? So my concern is that they may look at the contract medical personnel and they provided the services that were contracted for, but they may have skirted standard of care. So
Mr.
how do-
Parker, would you like
in other
to?
words, does the sheriff's position is that they do not have jurisdiction over the medical personnel?
Obviously, Mr. Wilson, I certainly can't speak for the sheriff's department, right? But you would think that any contract that's entered into, anybody that has that has entered into that contract has to follow the policies and whatnot of the county. That should be part of any general contract. Go ahead, Vice Chair Pintar.
I recall when we had, I think it was Assistant Sheriff Haidar here, we were shown like an org chart. And I believe that the medical contractor, if I am wrong, I apologize, but that the medical contractors are within that organization chart reported to one of the assistant sheriffs. That was my recollection. But it's a good question. And I don't know if we could have one of the sheriff's liaison answer it in the sheriff's report when we get to that item.
We could try, or better yet, I can research that issue as well. I mean, just because it's something we need to know. But again, anybody that's a contractor has to follow the county's policies, and they're subject to the county's rules and everything. That's
Has
just
to
the
be the
standard.
case,
That's
yeah.
a standard.
No, I think that's completely separate
what would
because
have to
they're not,
happen
yeah,
is,
yeah,
I'm
they're not,
so
they're
sorry,
not,
Vice Chair.
they're not labor employees. Go ahead.
What would have to happen is the contract company or whoever these folks are working with, that contract would have to be redone. They would have to have something added to it that now you're subject to this or that, perhaps. There's also the thought that maybe that's not the case. Maybe if it simply says you have to abide by all county rules and regulations, which is, hey, if the Board of Supervisors and it gets through meet and confer and it says the clerk has jurisdiction, well, then you're subject to that too. I think also the concern is that you will lose additional people who want to come and, and there's always that concern as well. Now, all of a sudden, you have folks who are doing a difficult job, right? Who now are going to think that they're being subject to this oversight by this rogue group of people or whatever. And that may, who knows, right? But we can cross that bridge when we get to it. But I'm almost certain if you're a contract employee, you have to abide by the county's policies and procedures. That's part of the contract.
Dr. Brown?
They don't have their rights or they can't, argue their rights or what have you because something that happened in the statute of limitation of money. Therefore, I want to know more about that. Why?
I do, Mr. Parker. I believe that we talked about this at a prior meeting, but if you would like to answer the question or come back to us.
We did, but we wanted to get through what we as a clerk can do with the rules and regulation revisions as they pertain to when we can investigate. And then we're also, let's not forget, we're also waiting for the response from the Sheriff's Department for the Critical Incident Review Board report, policy recommendations that we made. We made 5 recommendations about the CLERB reports that we're waiting for responses on. I think once we got that information to see exactly the lay of the land, keeping in mind that, we know from what we've been told by folks who've experienced deaths of loved ones in the county jails, that many times the only way that they can get information is to sue. And that's how come SB 519 was put forward. That's how come we've asked for the CLERB, So I think if we can just perhaps, if it's okay with the vice chair, if we can get through this item and then maybe we can reconvene on that at a later time once we have the information back from the department. Does that sound fair?
That sounds fair. And I would just like to summarize, unless there's any other board comments on this item. I think that people here who are interested in this can hear just from this discussion what an enormous undertaking it is to get jurisdiction over medical and the contractors and the additional jurisdictions that we've requested in these rules and regulation draft revisions. So as Mr. Parker said, some of the recommendations that were made were done internally. They did not require board approval. When we talked about all of the recommendations to us, these were the priorities, and it's an enormous undertaking, which we are willing to do and want to do. But that is why we chose to prioritize these recommendations first. So with that, I would invite a motion to approve the rules and regulations revisions before us tonight. Mr. Wilson. And Mr. Brown seconded. Ms. Kink, can you call the roll? Yes.
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 Thank you. Now we will go to unfinished business. Item A, Mr. Parker. Do we take public comment on this? I don't recall.
We can have public comment on any item,
Okay.
yes.
Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on any items under 8A, B, or C?
They may want to after I give my.
Okay, all right. Go ahead and with your
Can I
update.
lump them all together? Is that permissible since
I
they're?
think so.
Okay,
Yes. yes.
so as far as the CLERB detention facility inspection process and guidelines, not very good news on this front. We were in the process of, we have assigned Lenore Aldridge to do the detention facility inspections. With her experience working at, as a former detention officer, and then with her experience as a medical examiner investigator in her 5 years here at CLERB, she was the ideal candidate. She's still going to do that. The problem is we need to hire someone to backfill her to do our regular investigations. And that fell apart on us, unfortunately, over the last month. So we are kind of back at squares at ground zero when it comes to getting the appropriate staff so that Ms. Aldridge can focus on the detention facility inspections. So that's where we stand on that. We're not happy about it at all. We want to make sure that we can get the person in place so that she can begin to do. We were slated to begin the inspections at the end of March. But without the appropriate personnel, we just can't. So please bear with us as we walk through that and work through that, I should say. That's where we stand with 8A. CLERB jurisdiction expansion over medical service providers. You just heard it. One of the things that we did say that we were going to reach out to SEIU on numerous occasions. They showed up several times last year. They made it clear that they wanted to have a conversation with us, and I made it clear I wanted to have a conversation with them. But after several attempts to reach out to them recently, that hasn't worked. So I have no other update. I have not been able to get in front of their membership to answer any questions, quell any concerns. So right now, we're just going to move forward with what this board just voted for tonight so that we can move forward to the Board of Supervisors. And then finally, we're working, I think it's just safe to say, we're working with the probation department on many issues that I detailed in the October 2023 CLERB Executive Officer Report. I'm working very closely with counsel on that, Ms. Gross, and hopefully we'll have some more updates in the next month or two on each of those specific items. And there were many. So hopefully I'll be able to bring that back to you folks next month. And with that, that closes the unfinished A, B, and C 8, section 8.
Thank you, Mr.
And I
Parker.
do have one request to speak online.
Okay. And I believe we have Mr. Miller also requesting to speak. Okay.
We'll go to Mr. Miller first.
Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody Campaign. Probation. When we had a incident with drugs with our youth in probation, and there was 3 youth in probation that used drugs, and they all got sent to the emergency room. We asked the question, would have signed a request to find out more information about that, and probation just, last I remember, just slapped it in the face. Didn't answer anything about how these youth are getting drugs in our detention centers. It's the same issue with the adult centers. So here we have 3 youth on the exact same day get rushed to the ER, and then they say, nothing to see here, go away. We have a signed request, and they fall under the CLERB, and they said, nothing to see here, go away. Is this how we're going to do business with probation? I hope not. So we need to hold probation accountable. Someone from probation needs to be in that back row, and we need to get a handle on probation as much as we're getting a handle on the medical staff.
We thank you, Mr. Miller. We have one request to speak online, but before we do that, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Gross to address Mr. Miller's comments about that specific issue.
Thank you, Vice Chair Pintar and Mr. Parker. I have been working on this issue and provided a thorough legal opinion from CLERB on this matter. We are in the process of sharing that with the probation department, and it is on our list of things to discuss. I can say that my legal opinion is not the same as the probation department's, that no personal knowledge requirement is required under either the county charter, the county administrative code that governs CLERB, or the rules and regulations. However, to be fair, the probation department did provide some information They voluntarily provided the following information. There were separate incidents involving 4 different youth on September 28, 2023, which were deemed medical emergencies by facility staff. None of these incidents involved legal or illegal drugs or other controlled substances. The 4 youths were transported to local hospitals for evaluation and treatment. They all returned to the facility the same day after being medically cleared. Family members of the involved youths were notified in accordance with department policy. So they did provide some information, and we will be working through the bigger legal issue, and as far as we see it, regarding the requirements for sufficiency of citizen complaints, and working with the probation department to hopefully get a mutually beneficial resolution to this.
Thank you, Ellen. Now we will move to item 9, board member
There is one
Oh, I'm
request.
sorry. I apologize.
We will go to Sabrina Weddle. Sabrina Weddle.
Hello again. I just want to make sure that we're on item 8, correct? The unfinished business.
We are.
Okay. So again, my name is Sabrina Weddle, Saxon Rodriguez's older sister. As far as unfinished business, I feel like every meeting that we come to, it's continuously unfinished business. I know we're talking about inspections and then expansion over medical service providers. I will continue to say Melissa Burns is a nurse, usually a head nurse in charge. She was the day that Saxon died, July 20th, 2021, that stated, jail is the best place to receive treatment from an overdose. Well, overdoses shouldn't be happening in jail facilities. I'll tell you how the youth got drugs from the people that work there. I mean, we can sit here and say, oh, inmates bring drugs in all the time. But then when you sit here and you're talking about children, whether they're criminals or not, how many connections do they really have to these drugs? And the connections they do have, they're adults, and they need to be held accountable for the mistakes that keep continuing to happen. Like I said, no nurse should be stating jail is the best place to receive treatment, especially not when you didn't care for my brother Saxon Rodriguez. You allowed him to die. The deputies allowed him to die. They didn't do their job, their sworn duty. I take care of children, and if somebody were to die on my watch, I'd be held accountable. My mom takes care of children. If somebody dies on her watch, we're going to be held accountable. I know it is a process, and I want to just say thank you for continuing this process of getting this, not only, the deputy scan, but the medical providers being overseen. It's definitely something that we will continue to fight for. We're not giving up, and we will be here. Thank you.
And thank you.
Okay, with no other comments on item 8, we'll move to item number 9, board member comments. Any additional comments from the board not related to any of the items or related to the items? Ms. Federico Mondragon.
Not a question, not a comment, a question. How many vacancies and what vacancies do we have, just so that the public knows? We do have a new supervisor, so you can always talk to their staff in case you want to get a recommendation.
Mr. Parker and I were just talking about this. Do you want to give an update?
Sure, ma'am. Thank you. There are 11 total members of the CLERB, and right now we have 9 seats filled. The 2 vacancies are from District 4. So the new supervisor, Montgomery Stepp. My understanding from talking to staff at the county is that this is a priority for her to fill these 2 seats, and that she's actively attempting to do so as we speak.
Thank you, Paul.
Any other comments from the board? It's just board comment.
Like we did as a board with the body worn cameras, we didn't stop until we got that done. That's how I feel with the scan of all persons entering our detention facilities, that we need to continue this until it gets done. I know we will, but we need to continue this until it gets done.
I think we all agree. Mr. Wilson. Thank you, Mr. Ware.
Yeah, I concur with Mr. Ware, and I endorse that. I'd also like to again invite the sheriff to come before the board and answer some of our questions. In addition to that, I would like to know the district attorney's concern about in custody deaths. And if it's possible, maybe issue an invitation to come and express their concerns in the district attorney's office about in custody deaths, and perhaps give us some ideas of how to work with the sheriff's department.
Ms. Kina, did you have your hand? No, no.
Thing to say, again, I'm very interested in doing something more with the statute of limitations and making sure that these families have until we get all the information necessary before, I want to do something. I think we should look at that because until they have all the information they need from the medical exam, what have you, they don't have what they need. So we need to give them time to fully address their claim. That's it.
Thank you. No other comments from the board. We'll move to item number 10, Sheriff Probation Liaison. Reports from the Sheriff's Department and our Sheriff's Liaison and Probation Liaison. Mr. Parker?
Lieutenant, may I jump in just real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just so the board knows, this board expressed a desire to ask the department the status, or for the department to provide a status of the technological uses to monitor the health and well-being of the incarcerated population. This is a policy recommendation that we made 2 years ago. The department they responded positively to that recommendation. And they are actively attempting to use technology. The lieutenant is not going to have an update for this tonight because, I just kind of told him about it like last week. So there's no reason for him to have an update tonight unless he does, but I don't think so. But I just want to let this board know that he is researching that. And it's going to take him some time to give you that answer. Okay, but that he is aware of it. And so the members of the public are aware that that's what we've asked of the department, just to report back at a later time, not tonight. Thank you, Lieutenant.
You got
The
it.
floor is yours.
For those, I know there was mentioned earlier about who we are, but I know not all of you see all the meetings, but we've been coming I've been coming for a year. I gave a big intro when I was here, but my name's Dave Perkins. I'm a lieutenant with the Sheriff's Department. This is Sergeant Stan Bracy. We have Sergeant Gerardo Cortez Garcia in the back. So, and just so you all know, we weren't trying to leave the meeting, but it was standing room only. So we have an office right across the hall, so we give up those seats. So other than that, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Members of the board, do you have questions for the Sheriff's Liaison? Okay, we'll move to probation. Thank you, Lieutenant Perkins. I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson, go ahead.
I'd like to recognize the hard work that the men and women, the deputies, do every day. Sometimes we get lost in a lot of the criticism, but I think it's important, Lieutenant, you carry back to the men and women, the ones that are doing the hard work every day, those on patrol, and let them know that it's appreciated, and we know it's a very, very dangerous job.
Good. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate your communication with us, which has been really good. Really appreciate it, Lieutenant Perkins.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Okay, member of the public wants to speak. Sure.
On behalf of the Serna family, we just want to know, are you guys telling Kelly Martinez that she's wanted here to speak to us? Because she stated multiple times in the media that she's trying to reach out to the families. She's never reached out to us at once. So I just want to know if she knows that all the families are here wanting to speak to her.
Could you relay to Kelly Martinez, why does she make it so difficult for the families to get answers regarding the deaths of our loved ones? Why do they withheld even to the DA, my daughter's case? Why was she holding on to that? Or, I mean, excuse me, Bill Gore, despite that she was working under him. Why did they do that? Why was I told by the sheriff department that my daughter overdosed? Why do they like blaming the victims? And I'm not taking this out personally on you. I know you're the messenger to her, but you need to do the right thing. If it means cleaning house, starting over, it needs to be done. People are dying. Today, we have another family here because of the sheriff department. So unfair. We are the people that put these people in their position. We have the right, justice for our in custody loved ones.
I'm going to move to the sheriff's, probation liaison. Okay. All right, one more request to speak.
Supervisor Lewin with the probation department. Happy to answer any general questions.
Questions from the board? Ms. Kinayoub?
So I don't know if we were sending a request on this question, but it came up during our last meeting. I'm particularly not concerned, but would like to know how you go about diagnosing the youth if they have neurodivergence. Is that something that you take into consideration because it can cause physical reactions? Is that something that you're aware of with the youth? Is it something that you document, and is it something that your officers are trained on?
We do have clinicians assigned to every, if you're talking about in custody, I'm assuming, clinicians assigned to every housing unit, and our staff, our officers work closely with the clinicians in the capacity that they can share information that's not confidential. But to answer your question, we do get training on neurodivergence that was recently rolled out through our learning management system, and I think is still being taken. We have 800 sworn staff, so they take that training and sign off on it. Is it taken into consideration in terms of classification, or what exactly do you want to know?
My concern is how you handle a child that's neurodivergent, because they are children. They are children. I understand that they are in jail. I understand that they've been prosecuted. They've been convicted of things, but they are children. And my concern is that when they are in custody, a neurodivergent child doesn't process things the same way that somebody that may have a standard consideration does. So when you have a physical altercation or you have multiple officers speaking to them at the same time, my concern is that they are not processing that, begin to react physically, and then something physical happens to the child that escalates the situation. All of this really comes back to what are the things you are doing to de-escalate these situations with children?
Well, we have de-escalation training. We're rolling out a new training called MANT, which is a different type of interactive de-escalation training, different than what we've done in the past in terms of physical intervention, trying to avoid that when possible. But that's not always possible. So we are receiving training on that. We have to protect the safety of the youth and our officers. And if a violent incident occurs, there has to be a response. My unit, the internal affairs unit, evaluates use of force issues if they come up. So we address those, any training issues that might be relevant in terms of what was taken in consideration. Was it avoidable? Was it preventable? But those topics are important. We do receive training, how things are taken into consideration. We had a question recently about IEPs, which we are aware of, but those are handled through the school. So our officers have to be aware, oh, this youth might have this particular need, but we're not in school at the moment. So how can we mitigate that and deal with this issue? Not all the youths, and we have adults now by age, are a lot of them are predisposition. They haven't gone through the court process yet. So, we have to consider that as well. But the dynamics are very fluid with the DJJ returns, the kids who have come back to us from state programs. Those are 21, 22, 23-year-old kids. I mean, they're adults, but they're still in the youthful offender program. So all those factors are taken into consideration. The clinicians are privy to it. Our staff are aware of what the kids' needs are. When there's special protocols put into place by clinicians, that's always on the unit, that this particular youth has this particular need. To the extent they can share it with us. They can't always share specific medical information, but a special protocol about they may need an extra time in their room. But that gets tricky as well, because SB 1143 says we can't have the kids in their room really at all. And the room confinement issues come up. So it gets to be kind of a double-edged sword, but our staff overall do an excellent job working with the population, as changed as it's gotten over the past 5 years, even vastly different. A lot of kids that are on medications that have different side effects. We're not told about what the medications are, but we supervise MedPass, so we know quite a few kids are taking medication. It might make one kid lethargic. He doesn't want to come out of his room, but you got to come out of your room because it's programming time. Well, he doesn't want to come out of his room. So then it becomes this kind of issue and how to deal with that when you have 30 other kids on the unit to deal with. It's quite challenging, but our staff are well trained.
I may have help for you. The Blue Envelope program that they just rolled out makes somehow. The Blue Envelope program. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Let me let Ms. Kena finish her questions, and then I'll come to you, Dr. Brown. That's okay.
So to follow up, and again, this is something that really bothers me. Are you considering an alternative way to handle these things? Because my understanding is that neurodivergent and mentally ill adults are being treated the same as somebody that can process things on a normal basis, on a way that I would process things. And unfortunately, oftentimes that feels as a threat to somebody who doesn't fully understand what's going on. So now you've taken somebody that's not fully processing what's going on, and by treating them the same as others, you've caused a situation that escalates the situation. And that can put them into spaces where now you're separating them from other people, or you're considering that they're even more of a problem person, when really it's just that they're not able to fully think this through. And I feel like if we know that this is a problem, why are we not looking for alternative ways to handle this population? I mean, it's not a huge population. It's not a big population. Why are we not looking for alternatives? Because I can tell you, as the mother of a neurodivergent child, this scares the hell out of me. It really does. Because the idea that there are children like my child that end up in jail and everything seems like it escalates the situation, they may end up in there and it just progresses and progresses and makes it worse. I just don't see how that's a place that's going to do any good in any way.
Well, I appreciate the comments. Our facilities, especially our new facility, the youth transition campus, is a state-of-the-art physically and in programming. And it's been open about 2 years. And the types of things that go on there are innovative. The school, the programming, the mental health, the medical care is leaps and bounds. You know, my 20+ years with the department, you know, are in my opinion second to none. We have people coming from all over the country to see our facility. You know, can there be improvement? Sure, there's always room for improvement. These specific needs of these youth with these particular diagnoses, or you know, hopefully they're where they need to be in terms of our program. We used to have over 1,000 kids in custody, not 7-8 years ago, and now we have, I believe it's 200-ish. So the kids that don't need to be in custody are not in custody. Those that are getting top-notch treatment. But that being said, there's stuff that happens in the facilities. You know, I don't want to sugarcoat it. And there's violence that happens, and there's staff assaults that happen. I've been assaulted when I was working in the facility some time ago. And yeah, it's nice to have a good understanding of what is going on and why it's going on, but we need to address those issues sometimes quickly to make sure it doesn't get any worse. Can those be de-escalated? They are every day. They are every day. And as someone from internal affairs who reviews these videos, I see staff intervening all the time where it could have been a fight, it should have been a fight, and it wasn't. We get to know these kids, and some of them been with us for quite a while, years, some of them. And we develop these relationships, and we know how to develop rapport, and we know how to de-escalate, but sometimes it just doesn't work. So unfortunately, that happens. We address parents' concerns. We work with parents and families, treatment, the at post release, all of that, wraparound services. It's tremendous what's available. And our officers do I'm biased, but they do a great job in working with the families on the youth side.
Okay, for me to go to Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown.
I just want to add that I think the sheriff's department, someone just rolled out a program called the Blue Envelope. And I think that might have some answers to what you're looking for now. Could you please, do you all know what that is? Because it was reported on in the Union Tribune about a month ago.
Lieutenant Perkins, I think it's a sheriff's department, not probation.
Sure, but I know it's a blue envelope
I'm gonna
that
let
could
him.
be helpful to all parents, and that's why I want them to talk about this.
Yeah, we rolled out the Blue Envelope program, which is a program that we adopted. That has a blue envelope that if someone has some kind of condition or disability, it could be neurodivergent, or it's listed in the envelope. So if you're contacted by law enforcement, typically out in the field, like on a traffic stop or a pedestrian stop or a call for service, that individual can hand the blue envelope to the deputy. So they know right away, okay, this person might be on the spectrum. There might be some kind of learning disability, a variety of things. And that will kind of be a clue, I should say, for the deputies to maybe view that interaction a little differently. And inside the envelope, we'll have information about that person and maybe some of the challenges to help that contact hopefully go as smooth as possible.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Share the information.
Mr. Ware.
Yes, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. As a former deputy probation officer myself and working in the facilities and understanding the assaults that you talked about. At that time, we were dealing with 18-year-olds. And now you guys are dealing with 22-year-olds.
And older.
And older.
Yes.
Yeah, so my question is, do you think our people are appropriately trained to work with kids and I say kids, they're 22 to 23 years old. They're men.
Mhm.
And so you have a, I don't know, 6 foot man, and you have a, I don't know, a 5'4" deputy that has to work with this individual. So I have some concerns there.
To answer your question, like I said, our officers are well trained. If you've been in the department even years ago, our core training is always evolving with the times, you know, in terms of new things we need to know about trauma-informed care and adolescent brain development and certain things that weren't trained 15 years ago. And that's always a challenge. Even before the DJJ population came back. I mean, I'm not a particularly big person, but we have kids and young men and women that are bigger and stronger, and when they're the thing about being in custody, they're eating right, they're exercising, they're in good shape. And so yeah, we have to train to be able to handle that. Can we handle it one-on-one? If, you know, there's an assault, there's probably going to be an injury to an officer and or a youth. So we really try to avoid that through training, through de-escalation. But it's always a concern, and we always try to be safe in whatever we do. Absolutely.
Thank you.
In the field as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think there are any other I'm sorry, Ms. Pedri.
I'm wondering if we could get like some numbers of those youth who are incarcerated and like a breakdown of the ages. Is that something that you're able to provide, or is it available on your website?
I can't provide it right now, but I can.
Or next time.
I
yeah.
can compile some information. Sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I also wanted to request if we are able to reschedule. I know last year some folks went to go visit the new center.
Sure.
I didn't get a chance to go.
Yeah, set up a tour, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that.
I highly encourage you to go. I was really impressed with the new Youth Transition Center. Nothing's perfect, and I know we've reviewed some tough cases related to probation, but it was actually, I was able to participate in, watch a ceremony where young people had participated in a photography program, and they brought their families in and really expressed themselves through photography. And it was very emotional. It was very moving. So I do think that they are doing some good work there, and I appreciate your time here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Parker, yes. Did you say we have?
I believe we have is there a request to speak?
Okay. It's one person
It's all you.
one in person, and then
One in person
and then one
and
online. Okay,
correct.
very good.
Not that I need a microphone. I learned that long ago. I really apologize for being late. I had a houseless architecture meeting about having affordable housing, which is something we're much in need of. You know, I'm listening to some of the things that are being stated, and I'm like, wow, okay, we have youth in jail. Did anybody pay attention to psychology classes? I mean, I did do that in upper grades, but the frontal lobes aren't even developed. So we have people in uniform thinking it's okay to put them in jail. It is completely inappropriate to put a youth in jail that could go into a better system and learn how to work with their issues, because most of them come from foster care. Most of them come from abuse or trafficking, and our county has been closing down those resources for far too long. Why is it when we have questions to Kelly Martinez about homeless or people with neurodivergent cases, why are we asking Kelly Martinez? Shouldn't we have other services available? I mean, right now we are seeing that our jails are the source for people with psychological mental health challenges, which is a very high number of people. Everybody in this room actually will experience one issue at one point in their life. And that could be a depression, that could be a low, that could be a high. Biggest concern is, why are we having people that are detoxing off drugs or alcohol being put into these jails? And in the year of 2018, they're not being put on detox medications. That is one of their obligations. These nurses, these doctors, they think they could go into their jail and do a half job. I won't say the word I wanted to say, but it's asinine, it's completely insidious, and it's disgusting. I was at the court case and I paid very much attention to Elisa Cerna's family's plight. And again, my heart breaks because the minute she got there, she should have been put on detox medication. You cannot tell me that the deputies and nurses weren't aware that she fell backwards and hit that wall. I insist that we fight that all medical cases in our institutions and jails is governed by CLERB. We need to fight for that. And Kelly Martinez, she hasn't kept any single one of her promises. And we have Tony Atkins right now in assembly who got both Gore and Kelly Martinez into office, where we're suffering with more deaths and fighting for that, maximizing and making money on writing legislation so she could win as governor. She's not doing it out of the kindness of her heart. But what I do want to say is we need to definitely govern that. And neurodivergent does not belong in our jails. Thank you.
Ms. West, thank you.
I got a little.
Thank you. And it looks like we have one request to speak online in reference to item number 10, and that would be Sabrina Weddle. Sabrina Weddle, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, it's Sabrina Weddle again, Saxon Rodriguez's older sister. In regards to, the response from the lieutenant, I don't remember his name. I should have it memorized. I do remember your presentation about a year ago, as I've been coming to the CLERB meetings for almost about 2 years. This year will be Saxon's 3rd year being gone. As a registered behavioral technician who works hands-on with neurodivergent, I can never say it properly because I could just never say it properly, but I'm a registered behavioral technician. I work with hands-on with autistic children, and the amount of training that I had to personally go through before I even took my RBT test was about 80 hours plus just to even take my test to work hands-on. So I would love to know the training that you guys go through. That would be wonderful. Just so so the public can know. And I give my hats off to mothers that have to deal with the worry of if our children go to juvenile hall. And then I hear the improvements on juvenile hall. We then have to think about if these juvenile kids have to go from juvenile hall to a jail like San Diego County Jail or Donovan. Their life is going to be changed quick, because I know they don't have photography and all those other things in San Diego County Jail or Donovan, the programs that they're used to. So we also need to see this change going on in the other jails. We'll start by eliminating the process of even allowing drugs inside the facility, because we've seen time and time again, it's the sheriff's allowing it in. Kelly Martinez can say it's at a near zero, but she's a liar. We haven't even seen any updates on the San Diego Sheriff website of how much Narcan has been deployed since last year. And I want to know what she's hiding exactly. Is there a new rule that we're not uploading this website? Who's in charge of that? Who can we contact? Do I just call Kelly Martinez's office? I mean, that is how I finally figured out who the liaison was for my family about a year and a half later. So I really hope that the new families that are experiencing death this year aren't getting, hey, let me know if you need anything, but forget to mention they're the liaison. But I'm here to remind them, ask all the questions, ask who people are. And, I hope that we start to see some change, because right now we're on the path to see the highest number of the deaths this year. I didn't even mention that there has been a third death. That means there's been one more death since we last saw you guys, and it's a bit ridiculous. We have another family member here. These meetings are going to get longer.
That concludes public comment.
Ms. Gross, will you read us into closed session?
Thank you, Vice Chair Pintar and board members for your consideration this evening in closed session. We have 5 matters pursuant to Public Employee Discipline Dismissal Release pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Lenore.
Thank you. And you know what? I actually go into some of these detention centers and I'm part of Chef Angels.
Okay.
And we teach them how to have a culinary.
You do. Well, there you go. Now we know.
And so I talk to them, and I gotta tell you, meet a young lady who's pregnant the next time around.
I'm sorry. I'm listening. I'm listening. I promise.
Because her
I promise.
parents were on drugs and they drug her